wind that swept across the Wolfswood on the eve of the new moon carried a restless hush, as though the forest itself held its breath. Pine boughs sighed beneath a low canopy of slat-colored clouds, and in their depths the ravens muttered secrets too soft for mortal ears. Far within those shadows, a lone rider urged his destrier through the underbrush, the iron-shod hooves muffled by thick carpets of moss and fallen needles. Each time the horse snorted, vapor plume blossoming in the chill. The rider's hand strayed to the pommel of his sword, not out of fear of steel, but to remind himself that the weapon remained real. For the letter hidden beneath his jerkin spoke of wonders too vast to be trusted, and he dreaded the dawn when he must lay those tidings at the feet of his king. Robb Stark, king in the north and of the Trident, stood at the parapet of River Run's eastern wall as the rider emerged from the mist. Below, the tumblestone crawled past like a broad, sluggish dragon of gray-green glass. Torches flared on the battlements, gold banners whispering in the dark, and the wet flagstones gleamed around Robb's boots. He felt the damp in his knee. The wound he had taken outside Ashmark still throbbed when storms brewed, and he scowled at it, unwilling to betray weakness. Grey wind paced below, massive paws silent on stone, saffron eyes reflecting every torch flame. The direwolf's hackles bristled, not at the stranger's scent, but at something stranger still that wafted on the cool night air. A thunder of wings remembered only in dreams. The rider dismounted before the gatehouse, bowed low, and offered the letter to Edmure Tully. Robb's uncle wasted no breath on courtesies. He climbed the stair, two at a time, and thrust the parchment into the king's hand, still slick with rain. A red wax dragon sealed it. No Stark alive had seen that sigil used in earnest. Robb's pulse hammered as he broke the seal and unfolded the message. The script within was neat, almost scholarly, but it hinted at a tremor in the quill. To the king who calls himself Wolf. That salutation would have insulted lesser men, yet Robb found himself too enthralled by the next words to care. The hatchling beats beneath the ash and black basalt. The flame has kindled anew, as in Valyria of old. Fire grows hungry, and iron grows soft. Know this, the sky shall bear scales once more, and the wars of men will be judged by tooth and wing. Silence settled on the parapet, as heavy as snow before midwinter. Even the river seemed to hush. Robb passed the parchment to Edmure, whose brow furrowed until his eyes seemed to vanish into shadow. When he finished reading, Edmure exhaled a single word. Impossible. Yet the word lacked conviction. Robb turned to the writer. Who wrote this? The man shoved back his hood. Rain-matted hair clung to sunken cheeks. A maester of Dragonstone, your grace, or what remains of one. His voice cracked like brittle parchment. He bade me write hard and speak the truth, that you might choose your path before others claim the sky. Robb closed his fist around the parapet's slick stone. Far below, lightning spider-webbed across the river, caught silently by the horizon. Dragons. The word fluttered in his chest, at once absurd and inevitable, like the whisper of destiny his ancestors had long denied. He thought of old Nan's tales, the field of fire, Harrenhal melting like candle wax, and of how Caitlin used to soothe his boyhood fears by insisting dragons were dead alongside giants and children of the forest. But direwolves had returned to Winterfell, had they not? And white ravens flew when seasons changed. Why should the world not awaken a second wonder? Edmure's hand found his shoulder. If this is truth, it will change every oath, every siege line, every heart. We cannot keep it secret, yet proclaiming it at once might shatter half the banners sworn to us. Me, I will not trade secrets for lies, Robb said, staring east, always east, toward Dragonstone shores he had never seen. If fire rises, Better to meet it with eyes unshuttered than with blindfolds fashioned of fear. The night let out a distant roar like stone collapsing. Gray wind answered with a deep-throated growl. Somewhere beyond the horizon, thunder rolled again, though no lightning followed. The sound lasted too long, too guttural for mere storm. Robb felt the fine hairs on his arms lift. Not thunder, he realized. A creature's bellow. A thing born of furnace and abyss. By dawn, the camp stirred with rumors sharp as pikes. Men spoke of torches burning blue at midnight, of banners igniting without flame. Horsemen swore he'd seen 3 black shapes wheel across the new moon, each larger than the castles of the twins. Many laughed, yet their laughter tasted brittle, for wonder and dread are twins themselves, conceived beneath the same dark moon. Robb convened his war council in River Run's great hall, the river light fractured by stained glass trout. Lord Rickard Karstark leaned on the table, vast hands spread like bear paws. If Targaryen whelps truly fly again, they'll make for King's Landing. Let the dragons roast the Lannisters, I say, and we will sweep up the ashes. Moat Cailin's garrison commander, Sir Helmund Talhart, shook his head. Ashes do not bend the knee, Lord Karstark. They blow north upon the wind and settle in our lungs. Dragons never leave enough for crows, and we sit too close to their sky. Caitlin Stark, summoned from her chambers despite her fever, listened with lips pressed pale. When she spoke, the hall quieted as though winter itself had entered. Long ago, the dragons forged the peace that bound 6 kingdoms beneath one iron throne. They ended ancient feuds, yet birthed new grievances. If they have risen again, our maps must be drawn anew. But mark me, no beast born of flame heeds the prayers of a lone king. Robb's dreams that night were of wings, endless black wings blotting out the stars. He stood upon a field of grass turned to glowing ember, his armor melting into his flesh, and from the haze emerged a single-scaled shape of deepest crimson. Its eyes the pale gray of winter starlight. His own eyes. The creature bowed its head, as wolves do to their alpha, and when it opened its mouth, Robb heard the howling of the north wind, and the voice of his father calling him home. He woke at dawn dripping sweat, his chamber fire guttering low, the last log crumbling into soft glow. Outside, the bells of River Run tolled thrice, not for war or death, but for arrival. A ship on the tumble stone. By mid-morning, Caitlin stood beside Robb on the dock, wind snapping her scarlet cloak. The Drummond drifting under the portcullis bore no sails, only a single carved figurehead, shaped like a 3-headed dragon, half scorched as though by its own flame. Ropes were thrown. Sailors leapt ashore with haunted eyes. Their captain, a gaunt woman in black leathers, knelt before the king in the north and presented a small iron chest, bound in bronze chains. "From Maester Keltos of Dragonstone," she said, voice rough as gravel. He could not sail himself. The tides turned against him and other things. Her gaze darted skyward where gulls circled without cawing. When Robb opened the chest, heat breathed across his face as from a smith's forge. Within lay 3 eggs, each no larger than a man's clenched fist and yet impossibly heavy. One was the color of deep river stone shot with glimmers of red. Another shone like polished obsidian laced with opal veins. The third was pale green, its surface ridged like scales beneath 1,000 years of dust. But there was no dust. The eggs pulsed faintly, as though alive, each heartbeat echoing his own. Caitlin's hand flew to her throat. "These are no relics." "No," the captain agreed. "They are promises." Robb dismissed all witnesses save Caitlin Edmure and the captain, who named herself Marissa Kadar, once sworn to Stannis Baratheon, she claimed, and now the last shadow of a broken fleet. In a chamber, lit only by arrow slits, Robb laid the eggs upon a bed of iron shavings and charcoal, as the maester's letter instructed. The metal began to smoke, yet no fire had been set. Edmure crossed himself thrice. 7, save us. 7? Marissa laughed without mirth. Pray to stone if you like, the storm cares not. Robb felt a curious solace in the egg's warmth. He was born of the North's cold, yet some part of him, some buried spark, had always yearned for heat. The eggs thrummed, and in that rhythm he sensed potential vast enough to sunder empires. He thought of his banners, rusty wolves, mailed fists, sunbursts, crowned fish, all stitched by mortal hands. Dragons needed no banner. The sky itself was their standard. Night fell, and Robb refused to leave the eggs. Flames rose high in the braziers, casting huge shadows on the walls. Marissa spoke of the ancient rite, blood for fire, fire for light. A dragon's birth costs dearly, your grace. You must decide what coin you'll pay. Robb recalled the smoky vision from his wound fever after Oxcross. A wolf ripped apart by golden lions, yet its heart beat on and gave birth to something winged. He pressed a palm to the wound at his knee until fresh blood seeped through his breeches. He let it drip upon each egg. The first drop sizzled. The second burst into steam. The third vanished, drawn inward. Maurice's eyes widened. They accept. Outside, thunder cracked like splitting armor. The castle trembled. Somewhere distant, men shouted. Horses reared. Robb did not move. The eggs drank his blood, and in return a fragment of their fire seeped into him. Pain. Yes, but also exultant warmth. The glow of every hearth he had sat beside as a child, wrapped in wool, yet now magnified beyond reason. He felt his heart accelerate, matching their pulse. When the brazier coals collapsed into ash, the eggs remained incandescent. Lines of light traced along their shells, like veins of molten silver. Marissa bowed her head. It has begun. In the days that followed, the riverlands seemed to crouch beneath an unseen weight. Crows gathered on every rooftop, and once, at sunset, hundreds of them rose at once to wheel in a spiral that stretched from horizon to horizon, forming the shape of outstretched wings before dispersing. Men whispered that the old gods watched, and the 7 and darker powers older still. Messages flew faster than ravens. In King's Landing, Joffrey Baratheon reportedly struck a timber chair to splinters upon hearing rumor of dragonfire, then ordered a sept built on every corner of the city to ward off heathen rebirth. Queen Cersei laughed at such anxiety, until a blackened sail was sighted off Duskendale, its deck deserted save for a scorched mast carved into a dragon's tail. In Harrenhal's ruins, Roose Bolton received his informant, a hooded stable boy, who delivered a single phrase: "The wing beats under Wolf's bed." Bolton's pale eyes glittered. He dismissed the boy with a coin and turned to the Tower of Dread to pen a letter northward, though whether to Robb or to someone else, none could say. The Brotherhood without banners smelled the changing wind and paused their raids as Thoros of Myr dreamt 7 nights running of hearts aflame upon black scales. Beric Dondarrion, who had died 6 times, wondered if his fire would be consumed by something greater. And beyond the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen, mother of dragons, felt her own brood stir restlessly. Drogon snapped his iron chain and leapt skyward in the dead of night, circling the ship thrice before settling. She sensed a call neither her language nor dragons could name. Something ancient woke in the far west, kin to her children, yet not born of her blood. Back in Riverrun, Robb trained each dawn as he had since boyhood, but now every clash of steel rang brighter, as though each strike forged more than dents in plate. He sparred against Lord Smalljon Umber beneath the keep's northern tower, the clang of their blades echoing toward the Tumblestove's mist. When Robb disarmed Smalljon, rare feat against one so strong, the umber air laughed in delight. You fight like your arms on fire, your grace. Robb wiped sweat from his brow. Perhaps it is. Caitlin watched from the battlement, heart laced with fear for all that she loved, and more. Fear that the sun she knew might fade beneath the weight of the wings now poised to unfurl. She had gathered the old songs sung in Winterfell's kitchens, songs the maids whispered of ice meeting fire, and found in them more dread than comfort. For every tale of dragon glory ended in sorrow. Harren the Black had ruled from towers taller than Hightower's lantern, until one dragon turned them molten. And her Ned had once told her, in quiet hours before sleep, that Aerys Targaryen's pyres had glowed brightest when he feared his throne most. Yet when Robb walked the halls now, men stepped aside not out of deference alone, but in awe. Kindlings seemed to glow beneath his skin, nothing visible, merely felt, like the promise of dawn before first light. She remembered holding him as an infant swaddled in direwolf fur before the gods would weir wood, and she wondered if the old gods would recognize him still. On the 8th night after the eggs drank Robb's blood, the chamber erupted in light. Servants fled screaming that the castle was afire. Robb ran barefoot from his bed, gray wind at his heels, and burst through the iron-bound door just as the first egg cracked. A shrill piping filled the room, the cry of something both newborn and infinitely old. Flames licked every tapestry, yet the fire crept with purpose, away from the oak beams toward the iron cradle. Where the flames touched stone, they sizzled out. Where they touched Robb, they parted like mist. The crimson egg split open, shell flaking away in curling scales. From within emerged a creature no larger than a cat, skin slick and dark as heart's blood, wings translucent as deep ruby glass. His eyes were pale gray. It regarded Robb, hissed softly, then sprawled across the iron filings to soak in the residual heat. The second egg cracked a heartbeat later, unveiling a green hatchling streaked with bronze. The third resisted until Robb drew a dagger across his palm and let his blood sizzle upon its shell. With a sound like rending silk, it too opened, revealing an obsidian-skulled worm whose pupils seemed to sliver like black sun. Marissa bowed to her knees. 3, where once were none, she whispered, as it was at first light. The newborn's cries echoed down stone corridors, reverberating through centuries. All Riverrun knew then that tales were truth. Fire had returned at a wolf's bidding. Winter's chill lingered in the early spring, but the days lengthened, and with them rumor's reach. Robb named the hatchlings in the old tongue Valar, Mirax, and Denarian, names gleaned from a dusty corner of the Winterfell library that Bran had once haunted. Valar, the Crimson One, proved boldest, snapping at Grey Wind until the direwolf, puzzled yet intrigued, bowed his head in cautious respect. Mirax preferred perching on the stone sill of Robb's solar, wings half unfurled to catch every ray of sun, while Denarian nestled within the ashes of the hearth and stared at passing sparks with contemplative intensity. They grew with frightening speed. By the 3rd week, Valar's wings spanned 3 feet, and his hide had taken on a glossy sheen resilient to small blades. Mirax's talons gouged grooves into oak benches, and Denarian learned to spit sparks that danced across straw like mischievous sprites. Their hunger was bottomless. Riverrun's butchers worked day and night, yet calves vanished from nearby farms all the same. Small folk grumbled, but left offerings of goats at night, fearful yet half willing to worship. Robb spent hours among them, the scales of Valar warm beneath his palm, Denarian curling around his shoulder like a black-scaled mantle. He practiced the high Valyrian phrases Marissa taught him, though his northern accent mangled the vowels. Still, the dragons listened, and more. They watched him with unsettling comprehension, as though gauging the shape of his soul. He felt exposed, naked beneath those reptilian stares, and yet strengthened, as though 3 new hearts beat in chorus with his own. Lord Grey John Umber, upon seeing the hatchlings, laughed a booming laugh that shook the hall. "Give me a saddle that'll fit that, and I'll ride to the twins and piss on Walder Frey's roof before breakfast." "A year too soon, perhaps," Robb replied, yet a wry smile crept onto his lips. Strategy changed with every sunrise. Robb's war map, once rimmed with neat markers for scouts, sieges, and river crossings, now bristled with swaths of red ink sweeping arcs across 4 kingdoms, the hypothetical flight paths of 3 growing dragons. The very threat of them, Marissa insisted, equaled 20,000 men. "The sky is your host, your grace. Let it march where your foot soldiers cannot." Yet Caitlin argued caution. "A sword does not ask whom it cuts. A dragon's flame is worse. We risk becoming monsters in the eyes of those we would lead." "None, Caitlin," Robb countered softly. "Why spare my enemies their fear? They will not spare me my life." One rainy dusk, as stags roared in the woods beyond the walls, the Crimson Veiler took his first true flight. He leapt from the battlement, wings thrashing water from the air, and for a heartbeat plunged like a stone. Then the air caught him. He rose, a scarlet ember against storm clouds, circling once, twice, before vanishing into the lowering sky. Grey wind howled, half mournful, half exultant. Robb watched until his eyes ached, and when Veiler returned hours later, soaked and trembling with exhaustion, Robb wrapped him in a cloak and sat by the hearth till dawn, murmuring lullabies he scarce remembered. Fortnight later, a raven arrived from the Neck, bearing news that roused every man in the hall. Balin Greyjoy had died upon the bridges of Pike, and his daughter Asha sailed north to claim the Seastone Chair. Ironborn warships patrolled the Sunset Sea, their captains restless. The Sea Kings sensed weakness in the realm, yet they knew not of the wings beating inland. Robb seized upon the chance. "Let the Krakens strike at Lannister coasts, we shall bleed them both." He dispatched Roose Bolton to the Twins to secure Frey crossings, and sent Mage Mormont west to harry the Gold Road. Yet when Edmure asked if he slew his foes by fang or flame, Robb answered only by justice. Still, the dragons grew. Veiler's wings spanned the width of a cart. Mirak's green scales darkened to viridian, mottled with copper. Denarian, smallest, proved cunning. He perched upon Robb's shoulder in council, eyes like twin pits of midnight, dipping his snout at maps as though parsing them. The Maester at River Run recorded their growth with trembling quill, noting that in half a year they would equal the beasts of Aegon's conquest. He wondered, was the world poised for conquering anew? Marissa prepared a brazier in the godswood of River Run, surrounding it with black candles, fashioned from the fat of goats, sacrificed beneath moonless sky. "Binding is necessary," she explained. "Worms must know their rider, or they will break him." She drew Valyrian glyphs in ash on Robb's palm, whispers of fire dancing across his skin. Caitlin watched, fists clenched at her sides, knowing she could not still this tide. She could only pray her son remained her son, not some creature molded by ancient magics. Night deepened. Rain fell, hissing on candle flame. Robb knelt before Veiler. The dragon's heart beat loud as thunder. He placed a hand upon the beast's breast, between 2 scales as warm as forge iron. Veiler leaned in, nostrils flaring. Smoke coiled from his jaws. Then he exhaled a breath hot as midsummer. Robb's cloak caught ember, yet he did not flinch. Marissa chanted. Veiler's eyes mirrored the candlelight, and then Robb's own. In that instant, a bond snapped taut between them, bright as whipcord. He felt height, the dizzying freedom of open air, wind knifing beneath his wings. He felt hunger, ravenous, visceral. And he felt loyalty, not commanded, but chosen. The candles guttered. Silence fell. Robb stood, smoking slightly, yet unburnt. Valor bowed his head. Word reached Tywin Lannister at Derry that Robb Stark had whelped dragons. The old lion looked to the sky and saw only cloud. Then let him march them, he told Pycelle, for scales are nothing against strategy. Yet that night, a shadow passed over the camp, blotting the moon. Horses screamed. By morning, 3 supply tents lay in smoking ruin, charred banners forming strange sigils in the embers. Tywin ordered vigilance. Archers drilled at straw targets painted with wings. Morale frayed. A sellsword from Pentos told tales of Cuahor, where Unsullied had faced dragonfire and melted like wax. Steel means little, he said, when the air itself becomes a sword. Cersei urged the High Septon to declare dragons abominations. The Sept of Baela rang with sermons promising 70-forged salvation. Yet, the common folk remembered stories. Their grandsires told on winter nights of silver-haired queens riding dusk, fear twined with fascination. Children carved wooden worms, setting them aflame to watch how they burned, shrieking with delight. In the Red Keep, Aerys's old vault, once stuffed with wildfire, stirred unwanted memories. But dragons are more than weapons. They are symbols, thunder made flesh. And across the narrow sea, Daenerys felt hers call again. She unfurled a map of Westeros, finger hovering over the riverlands, sensing the locus of renewed flame. Another, she whispered to Jorah Mormont, another mother to my children. Jorah frowned. Or another peril. Daenerys smiled with something like wonder. Fire knows no kin, yet kindles kinship. I must meet this king of wolves. Nanaman, possibly. Back in Riverrun, Robb addressed his bannermen in the courtyard. The dragons perched upon the crumbling statue of Brendan Rivers. The air smelled of rain and smoke. The time comes when our cause must rise beyond earthbound feet, he said. When the sky itself demands reckoning. We fought for northern freedom. Now we fight so that no throne wields fear unchallenged. He unsheathed his sword. The blade glowed faintly, reflecting Valar's ember gaze. I will parley with my enemies, not as supplicant nor conqueror, but as steward of a power older than crowns. Those who kneel, we shall spare. Those who stand, we shall meet, without malice, yet without mercy. The wolves howled. The dragons answered with shrieks that scorched the mist. Men knuckled their brows, uncertain whether to cheer or pray. Their king seemed to stand at the crossroads of man and myth. That night, Catelyn visited the godswood alone. Rain slicked the leaves. The heart tree wept red sap. She knelt, palms pressed to damp loam. Old gods, hear me, she whispered. Guard my son's heart from flame. Let him keep the mercy that bore him forth. Let the wolf guide the dragon, not the dragon devour the wolf. Men shoots the diastokoi. No wind replied, yet somewhere distant she heard wings beating against the night, slow, deliberate, like the tolling of a great bell announcing dawn before any mortal knew the sun had yet begun to rise. On the morning Robb resolved to break camp, the sky broke open with gold. Valar soared above, trailing smoke, while Mirax glided low over the tumblestone, her reflection rippling like a green star fallen to water. Denarion clung to Robb's saddle pommel, embers dripping from his jaws each time the direwolf banner snapped. The host marched east toward Harrenhal, seeking to dislodge Gregor Clegane. Robb rode at the column's head. When shadows crossed the sun, men gasped, but Robb felt only anticipation. For every wing beat above him was a promise. The world would know new law. At noon, outriders returned with warning. The mountains men had set a trap on the charred plain before Harrenhal. dug spikes and trenches to funnel cavalry into killing fields. Robb studied the map, then turned his gaze upward, where Mirax hovered like a storm cloud of emerald. He raised his fist. Single command in cracked Valyrian split the air. Mirax folded her wings, stooped, and breathed a ribbon of green-tinged fire that traced the enemy trenches as though painting revelation upon the earth. Woodworks erupted in blue-white roar. Pitch stores exploded. Horses screamed. From afar, the flames resembled serpents slithering through wheat. Robb's men watched, wide-eyed, as the path to Harrenhal's ruined gate opened unchallenged. Not a soul dared charge against them. Some dropped weapons, others fled. The mountain himself retreated into the castle's belly, like a beast cornered in its lair. When Robb's army advanced, they did not step over corpses, but over shadows burnt into ground where men had stood moments before. The scent of charred flesh clung to their nostrils. Some wept. Others crossed themselves, murmuring half prayers, half curses. War, they realized, had changed shape entirely. Robb Stark dismounted before Harrenhal's melted towers. Valor circled overhead, a crimson halo around the broken crown of stone. Robb looked upon that ruin, monument to Dragonfire past, and felt a shiver. History's wheels spun anew beneath his feet. Within the keep's echoing halls, Gregor Clegane emerged, helmet under one arm, greatsword slick with oil. He bared teeth, eyes wild. "Monster," he growled. Robb stepped forward. "Which of us?" His voice was soft, yet carried to every corner of the hall. Behind him, Denarian perched upon a fallen chandelier, scales glistening. "Lay down your sword, Sir Gregor, and perhaps history will forget your sins." The mountain roared, charging. Dragonfire met steel. The clash that followed would be sung, yet sung carefully, for some truth scorched the tongue. The tale of that duel, of the flames that devoured half a corridor of Harrenhal, and of the mountain's final shriek, echoed across river and hill. In King's Landing, small folk swore they heard it in nightmares. In Old Town, the Citadel's graybeards convened an emergency conclave to reopen scrolls sealed since the doom. They argued by candle flame whether a wolf rider of flame fulfilled any prophecy or birthed new ones. The glass candles burned bright that night, foretelling vistas none dared gaze upon. Robb claimed Harrenhal but did not linger. The fortress reeked of burned blood and molten stone. He marched south along the King's Road instead, dragons wheeling above. Refugees streamed out of villages, some kneeling, others fleeing. Robb's supply trains struggled. Charred fields yield little grain. He commanded his quartermasters to distribute gold and spare food, to send healers behind his lines. "Fire must forge, not consume," he said, though whether men believed or merely obeyed remained hazy as smoke. Vela reached the size of a warhorse by midsummer's height. Mirax and Denarian lagged not far behind, still too small to bear riders at full armor, yet their presence alone shattered sieges. Stone that had withstood decades cracked under their breath. Robb learned moderation, short bursts of flame to frighten, never to annihilate whole towns. He sought surrender, not cinders. Yet each victory carved a wider gulf between him and his bannermen. Some worshipped him, others feared him. In the quiet of his tent he confided to Caitlin, "What am I becoming?" She held his hands, those once scraped by boyish swordplay, now calloused by greater fires. She had no answer. Autumn's first chill brushed the leaves when a raven from Dragonstone arrived, carrying words that froze Robb's blood more than any winter wind. "I come to Riverrun. Guard your sky, for mine shall greet it." Signed in a hand bold yet elegant, Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, mother of dragons. Robb stood upon the battlements, the letter fluttering in his grasp. Valor perched behind him, tail curling around a crenelle. Ray wind prowled, hackles raised. "Another storm," Robb murmured. Caitlin joined him, eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun painted the river gold. "Two storms," she corrected gently, "and far across sea and land, in skies yet uncharted, silver wings beat westward, guided by the promise of reunion or reckoning. The world poised between wolf and dragon, between north wind and wildfire, uncertain which flame would forge a dawn worth living through, or leave naught but ashes in its stead." Unichalam. Rain drummed upon the slate roofs of River Run, as though each drop were a pointer tapping out destiny upon stone. In the courtyard, torches hissed and guttered, their flames smothered to trembling tongues of gold that could not quite fend off the creeping dusk. A hush had settled over the keep, as if every soul, lordling and scullion alike, held breath in anticipation of a meeting writ in prophecy and fear. The king in the north who rode with wolves and fire, and the dragon queen who had crossed half a world on wings, sown of legend. Robb Stark stood at the Godswood's edge, where mist clung like cobweb to the heart tree's pale boughs. His hand rested on Vaylor's neck, the dragon's scales warm and restless beneath his palm. A furnace contained only by will. Vaylor's eyes tracked the sky, pupils widening at each distant flash of lightning. Beyond the walls, the tumblestone roared, swollen by autumn storms, as though protesting the convergence of powers ancient as stone itself. Gray wind prowled the moss beneath the weirwood, ears pinned back, scenting the air in agitation. The direwolf's growl rumbled like an echo of thunder, yet Robb felt no unease in the union of wolf and dragon at his side. He had grown accustomed to paradoxes these last moons. Now the world seemed woven of them. He sensed her arrival before he heard it. A pulse beneath the skin of the sky, a tremor that stirred the hairs on his forearms. Vaylor's head snapped up, nostrils flaring. Somewhere beyond clouds, wings beat a rhythm older than kingdoms. Robb exhaled a breath he had not realized he held. Hoofbeats clattered in the outer yard. Sir Reynold Westerling hurried into the Godswood, rain slicking his armor. "Your Grace," he called, pausing only when Vaylor's hiss forced him to keep a respectful distance. "A ship bearing a black and red sail has moored beneath the eastern arch. 4 dragons circle above, larger than yours, my lord. The Queen of Dragons is coming ashore." Robb nodded, though his gaze remained fixed on the roiling clouds. Each mortal footstep seemed paltry beside the thunder of claws he imagined ringing against the firmament. He turned to Grey Wind. "Stay," he murmured, and the beast lowered his head, though not without a rumble of protest. Vaylor, sensing the command aimed also at him, lashed his tail but remained. Robb walked alone to the eastern wall walk, cloak plastered to his shoulders. Rain sheeted off his brow as he peered into the gloom. Lanterns bobbed down the quay, illuminating a single longboat rowed by men in dark leather, their strokes perfectly matched. At its prow stood a woman glimmering beneath oilskin, silver gold hair unbound despite the tempest, posture erect as a spear, violet eyes fixed on the looming towers. Behind her 4 shapes wheeled in the sky, massive wings buffeting the gale aside, as though the storm itself yielded to their passage. The sight stole Robb's breath. Drogon. He knew it must be Drogon. Banked low, black wings blotting torchlight, red membranes aglow whenever lightning forked across the clouds. Rhaegal, green as summer canopy, flew at his queen's starboard shoulder. Viserion, pale gilt, mirrored him on the port. And behind them, a younger, slender dragon of smoky mauve and gold, traced an eager spiral. 5 dragons in the sky over River Run, 3 sworn to a wolf, 2 to a dragon queen, and 1 yet unnamed to northern tongues. The old tales had never spoken of such a congress. Catelyn Stark awaited on the dock, Maester Vyman at her elbow, Edmure a step behind. The longboat scraped against stone, sailors leapt to tie moorings. The queen disembarked with feline grace, rain swirling around her but seeming not to touch her. Catelyn bowed her head, an acknowledgement, not a surrender, while Edmure made a stiff, half-courtly gesture, wary eyes darting upward. The queen responded with the smallest inclination, a warrior's nod to equals. ROBB descended the stair. Each step rang less like iron on stone than like drum beats summoning heart to battle. He reached the dock as Daenerys Targaryen strode toward him, her cloak of red samite plastered to her back like spilled blood. Close. She was smaller than he expected, yet there was nothing diminutive in the poise of her shoulders. Their eyes met, gray to violet, north wind to desert flame. And for a heartbeat river run ceased to exist around them. "Your Grace," ROBB began, voice steady though the storm howled. "Your Grace," she answered, and tilted her chin as if measuring him for steel. They stood so near he saw the droplets caught on her lashes, saw the faint silver roots shining at her temples in lantern glow. Above, Drogon loosed a bark of smoke and fire, an elemental announcement that rattled windows clear. Valar answered from within the godswood, a shrill challenge that cracked like a whip across the yard. Instinct surged through ROBB, a desire to reach for steel, to defend his own. But Daenerys raised one hand, palm outward. Drogon banked away, begrudging, yet obeyed. "Your children are bold," ROBB said. "As bold as I must be," she replied. Her gaze slipped past him to the keep. "And yours?" "Learning, swift." ROBB gestured toward the godswood, where shadows moved, Valar pacing at the verge of torchlight. "They will cause little mischief, provided none seek to cage them." Daenerys' lips curved into something almost like a smile. "A philosophy I share." Catelyn stepped forward then, formality tugging the moment back to courtly ground. "Our hall is open to you, Queen Daenerys. A dry hearth waits." "Dry?" Daenerys lifted a brow at the sheets of rain. That would be a novelty. But she inclined her head and allowed Catelyn to lead her beneath the portcullis, Edmure, and guards shadowing close. ROBB followed at her shoulder, feeling an invisible tension arc between them, like the heat between opposing flames. Within the great hall, banners dripped rivulets that pooled upon rush-strewn floor. Servants hastened to stoke fresh fires. The roar of dragons overhead faded to distant thunder as the beasts settled on ramparts and roof ridges, talons scraping slate. Valar perched upon the tallest turret, wings mantled wide, red eyes staring defiantly at Drogon across the courtyard. Yet no flame spilled. Their challenge remained a silent conversation of posture and breath. Daenerys shed her soaked cloak, revealing mail of fine blackened steel chased with ruby threads. Small dragonhead clasps bounded at collar and wrist. ROBB's own gob wolfskin mantle over chain suddenly felt provincial, yet he did not shirk. He offered her the dais, but she waved him beside her. They stood eye to eye. "I left Meereen 6 moons past," she said without preamble. "I followed dreams that were not dreams, visions of fire that led here to you." ROBB's jaw tightened. "You crossed 2 seas on visions." "On destiny," she corrected, voice soft yet unyielding. "My own dragons felt a call, one deeper than mere winds or hunger. They would not rest until we answered it." ROBB glanced toward Catelyn, whose mouth was a thin line. "Your destiny may ask more than mine can give. Perhaps our destinies entwine." Daenerys lifted a hand as though feeling the air between them. 100 years ago, the dance of the dragons tore House Targaryen in two. Fire consumed fire. I will not repeat that war. Your dragons are kin to mine, though not of my blood. Let them thrive together, or the world will drown in flame beyond our governance. "Nadi," ROBB considered her. "You propose alliance. I propose we end the lie that the Iron Throne, or any throne, can stand against what flies above it." A glimmer sharpened her eyes. "Let kingdoms look up and see 2 banners, wolf and dragon, woven into one sky. Let fear be replaced by wonder." Behind them, torches crackled. Edmure cleared his throat. "The realm may not welcome such wonder, Your Grace." Fear roots deep. Nay. Daenerys turned smoothly. Fear can be taught new shapes, Lord Tully. As your walls once learned when Aegon's fires melted Harrenhal, fear shapes itself to power. Robb folded his arms. Words enough. He motioned servants forward with mulled wine and flagons. He offered Daenerys the first cup. She accepted, drank, then met his gaze over the rim. Tomorrow, he said, we fly together. Let our children learn one another. Let us see what sky they draw if they share it. Lightning flickered, and in its brief glare Daenerys' features softened, not conquered, but intrigued. Tomorrow, she echoed. Night had thickened to velvet by the time Robb quit the celebratory hall, leaving Edmure to supervise placements of Dragon Watch guards on every parapet, an exercise in futility but a balm for anxious men. The castle breathed uneasy behind him. He felt it in each footfall on the rain-slick stairway leading to his solar. When he pushed the oaken door, he found Bran seated cross-legged upon the rug, candlelight flickering in his wide gray eyes. "Little brother," Robb murmured, surprised. "I thought you slept." "I was dreaming," Bran replied, voice distant. Or looking. Hard to say. Robb knelt beside him. "At what?" "Wings," Bran whispered. So many wings. They kept folding into darkness, then into light. His gaze sharpened, old beyond his years. "She is not your enemy." "I know." Robb brushed stray hair from Bran's brow. "But not my friend yet either." "Not enemy," Bran insisted, and placed a hand over Robb's heart. Heat pulsed there, residual bond to Valor or something deeper. Robb could not tell. When the last snows come, you must have more than fire. You must have song. "Song," Robb echoed, brows knitting, mushy. Bran's eyes flicked to the closed shutters as if seeing through them. "The song of ice and fire. You are neither alone." A shiver raced Robb's spine. "Sleep, Bran. Dreams grow clearer by morning." He guided his brother to the bed, tucked quilts tight. Yet when Robb stood to leave, Bran caught his wrist. "Beware the shadows that ride on wings. They do not love the fires that made them." Robb studied the thin fingers clutching him. "I will remember." He extinguished the candles and strode into corridors whose stones steamed with dragon breath warmth. Dawn arrived cloaked in fog so thick the river seemed to exhale across every courtyard. Up the east battlement, Daenerys waited, hair braided back, pale cloak billowing like a sail. Drogon crouched behind, wings drooping in the mist, yet his eyes burned embers. Robb approached, Valor padding at heel, scales humming at proximity to greater kin. No words prefaced their ascent. Robb vaulted atop Valor's shoulders, thighs gripping tight beneath ridged haunches. Valor shifted, uneasy but eager. Across the wall, Daenerys mounted Drogon with fluid familiarity, her hand stroking his neck until the beast's muscles bunched. Robb shouted a Valyrian phrase. Marissa drilled into him. "V's off!" "Rise." Valor leapt. One each. The air caught in his wings, like a hammer to shield. Mist snatched at Robb's cloak, stung eyes to tears. A beat later, Drogon followed, the downdraft of his wings buffeting Valor sideways. Robb steadied, jaw clenched. Fog shredded around them, revealing the sun as a molten coin climbing through vapor. Mirax rose from a turret, Denarian after, smaller, swifter. Rhaegal and Viserion joined in languid orbits about Drogon, and the young mauve hatchling trailed Valor with puppyish enthusiasm. 7 dragons now traced spirals above River Run, their roars melding into a single throbbing chord that shattered any lingering doubts among the watchers below. Robb leaned forward, feeling Valor's heartbeat through scale and sinew. "Higher," he called. "Show them the realm." Valor ascended into burgeoning blue where sunlight washed mist's gold. Drogon matched, neck outstretched. For several heartbeats, the alpha dragons flew parallel, wingtips nearly brushing, riders separated by a chasm of air and a millennium of history. Robb glanced sideways, Daenerys' profile calm, assessing. He lifted 2 fingers in a silent salute. To his surprise, she returned it. Below, the green riverlands sprawled, patchworks of field and forest, dotted by ant-like armies and hamlets. From such height, even Harrenhal's cracked towers resembled children's toys scattered on grass. Robb felt vertigo of power. One tilt of Valar's wings, one gout of flame, could erase villages in moments. He tightened reins, thin-woven silver chains that served more symbol than constraint, and whispered, "No ruin today." Daenerys signaled Drogon, who banked. Rhaegal fell into formation behind Valar, matching wing beats. Denarion positioned himself between the giants, acting as darting envoy, occasionally chirping territory claims that Drogon endured with bemused growls. The sky had become a court, its orders and titles defined by instinct older than runes. They flew south 5 leagues, reached the ruins of a burned Lannister supply camp, Robb's doing weeks earlier. Ashfield still smoked in pockets. Daenerys slowed, surveying the black swath. Robb felt her gaze on him, even across the distance. "Some wounds do not scar, they gape," she called, voice carried by wind. Robb angled closer. "Better ashes than chains. Sometimes both remain," she murmured, cryptic. They circled. Below, men clustered near shattered wagons, perhaps salvage crews. Drogon's shadow passed over them, and panic rippled. Robb saw archers raise bows, heard faint shouts. Rhaegal snorted flame as warning. Arrows fell short. Yet within him, a coil of regret stirred. These were not soldiers. They were survivors. He guided Valar lower until roof-high above Rex. A hush spread. "Lay down arms," Robb called, wishing the words carried weight at such heights. He unbuckled the satchel at his belt and hurled a purse of coin earthward. It thudded in mud. "For food," he shouted. "Go home." Confusion below, then a tentative cheer. Daenerys watched, eyes unreadable. Drogon huffed smoke, but did not strike. Robb climbed skyward once more, pulse strong with music of something new, mercy with wings. They alighted near midday on an outcrop east of the river, where blueberry bushes clung to crumbling chalk. As dragons settled, some to bask on sun-warmed stone, others to chase each other through thermal currents, Robb and Daenerys found shade beneath a jagged rock overhead. The vantage overlooked miles of swaying grass, shimmering under sun. Robb drank from a skin, passed it to her. She drank deep. "Good water," she said. "Cold rivers suit the north." He wiped his mouth. "Dough, hot sands suit you. My people made them home." Eyes distant. "Yet I was born amid a storm where sea and sky met. I think I always belonged to wind. Why? It seems we all do," Robb said, gaze tracking Mirak's lazy barrel roll. Silence settled, not uneasy. At length, Daenerys spoke. "The Iron Throne murdered my family, yet here I find a king who spurns it. Fate is cruel in irony." "I sought freedom, not crown," Robb said. "Southron blades gave me title, and dragons gave you power. And wait." He looked at his hands. "Every victory burns hotter." Daenerys' laugh held sadness. Fire spares none of its bearers. They shared stillness until Denarion scampered between them, chasing a lizard. He pounced, missed, and snapped jaws in mock fury. The queen chuckled, a sound almost girlish, disarming. Robb ruffled Denarion's crest. "He thinks himself a lion." "He thinks himself alive," Daenerys corrected gently. "How many men do the same?" Robb met her eyes. "Fewer each war." Drogon roared then. From the north a flight of ravens wheeled, disturbed by his challenge. Yet Robb sensed deeper omen. Ravens rarely flock on bright noon. He stood. Valar lifted his head, nostrils twitching. From the horizon rose dust, columns of marching men, their banners indistinct but numerous. A war party on the King's Road heading west. Edmure's scouts had reported no such host. Robb cursed softly. Lannister reinforcements for Harrenhal, perhaps. Or worse, Daenerys' narrowed eyes. Numbers hard to gauge. Robb vaulted onto Valar's back. But we must see. I will not loose dragons upon rumor. I go too, Daenerys declared, striding to Drogon. Together. Without pause, she climbed. They soared across meadow and wood until the host resolved. 5,000 men in crimson and gold, led by a banner white with gold heartbeat, the Lion of Lannister quartered with crowned stag. A royal host, though smaller than Tywin's main armies. At its head rode a knight in gleaming helm with antler crest. Sir Kevan Lannister, Joffrey's hand since Tywin's last withdrawal. Trumpets brayed as dragons swooped overhead. Men scattered like seeds before wind. Horses bolted. The column unraveled. Robb circled once, assessing. Few archers dared draw. Kevan alone kept seat, visor upturned to the sky, his expression grim but resolve. He lifted a white flag of parley. Robb leveled Valar above him, 30 feet between dragon and earth. He gestured acceptance. Valar did, talons denting road stones, and Robb dismounted. Dust swirled around him. From Drogon's side Daenerys approached, cloak streaming. Kevan Lannister dismounted as well, handing reins to a squire whose eyes rolled white in terror. Kevan bowed stiffly. Your graces, he intoned, voice hoarse. His gaze flicked from Robb to Daenerys and back. 7, save us all. Robb inclined his head. Why bring war so near Riverrun? Not war. Kevan's shoulders sagged. Court. He drew forth a scroll. King Joffrey summons all pretenders to King's Landing for trial by 7. Under the High Septon's auspices. He names you traitors to peace if you do not attend by the full moon. His hand trembled. Fear, exhaustion, or shame. Robb could not tell. Robb almost laughed. Kings do not beg to be obeyed through parchment from afar. Joffrey begs nothing, Kevan said wearily. He prepares wildfire, new scorpions, sellsword fleets. He will burn his city before yielding. A child-threatening tantrum? Robb muttered. He looked to Daenerys. She studied Kevan. And what of small folk? Will they burn also? What, please? Kevan swallowed. In truth, your grace, many have fled. King's Landing festers. He paused. My nephew lacks temperance. I begged Tywin to curb him, but the old lion is gone north to crush Robb's bannermen. I fear if dragons come south, Joffrey will unleash chaos none can mend. Robb considered. He invites us to his trap. He invites doom upon his own. Daenerys corrected. Kevan's voice dropped. Help me stop it. Robb felt the weight of summer skies, of endless expectations. To ride south was to step into wildfire's maw, but to stay was to leave innocence at a mad king's mercy. Again, the wheel of duty ground between heart and heart. Daenerys gently touched his arm. We need not play his game, but we must end it. Kevan knelt then, armor scraping road. My blood built a house of pride. I kneel to save what remains. He lifted the scroll. Take this, Joffrey's seal. Show any gate and they must open. Robb accepted. The wax wasn't lion at all, but a stag crowned. Robert's old seal, repurposed by a boy who wore a crown too large. It crumbled slightly under his grip. He helped Kevan stand. Your loyalty to realm outweighs loyalty to king. I hope. Kevin's eyes glimmered. Or I am already damned. Daenerys said, return to King's Landing. Tell them the world has grown beyond thrones. Kevin bowed. I will try, your grace. He mounted, signaled retreat. The lions gathered, spooked yet grateful to escape unscorched. As their column trudged east, Robb felt the tug of war lines shifting like currents. They camped that night beside a ruined mill whose wheels still creaked though stream long dry. Dragons roosted on broken rafters. Wolves prowled. Scouts rode. Couriers left with orders to halt Riverland offensives until Robb's return. For Robb had decided he must ride south, not to answer Joffrey's summons, but to break it. In the glow of campfires, he convened council. Great John Umber, Brynden Blackfish, Maid Mormont, and Marissa stood ringed around a table of improvised timbers, maps weighed by stones. Daenerys attended with Missandei and Jorah Mormont. The latter greeted Mage, his cousin, with stiff nod. Robb spoke. King's Landing holds 50,000 souls. Wildfire caches enough to drown them in green flame. Joffrey would see the city burn before parley. We can strike from above, but flame against wildfire profits none. Daenerys said, we approach by sea. My fleet waits at Fair Isle. We feint a siege, draw royal forces to walls. Dragons disable scorpions, but do not breathe upon stores. Jorah stroked beard. We need men within to seize the alchemist's guild and douse the jar. Meg slammed fist. Give me 20 of my she-bears. We'll slip through flea-bottom tunnels, slit throat. Robb shook head. City Watch loyalty stands uncertain. Wildfire charges set to detonate at any rebellion. One spark, all perish. Marissa stepped forward, eyes like candle flames. There is another way. Dragonfire tempered of the right pitch can consume wildfire without ignition. A technique lost since Valyria. Daenerys studied her. You speak of searing the very air. Exactly. Marissa spread fingers over map. If Drogon and Valar combine breaths at high altitude, the inferno can vacuum wildfire's vapors before flame reaches jars, rendering green fire inert. Robb raised a brow. You are certain. Certainty is a luxury we abandoned the moment dragons hatched in a wolf's castle, she said. But I believe. Silence as council weighed impossible against catastrophic. Finally, Daenerys laid hand on the table. Then we learned their song. Over 4 days, the armies of wolf and dragon shadow marched south, hugging woods to evade Lannister patrols. Small folk gathered to watch winged silhouettes cross the sun, murmuring prayers, some in awe, some in terror. Word raced ahead like wildfire of its own kind, the Dragon Queen and the Wolf King forging alliance. In tavern songs sprouted, some sycophantic, others fearful, yet all bore a refrain. The sky has 2 crowns. At Bitterbridge, Robb's columns met smithies who gifted iron tridents, tributes from river lords. At Roserod, hedged knights swore unlooked-for fealty, bringing banners newly painted with intertwined wolf and dragon. Robb accepted but kept hearts leashed. War's tide, once beloved of bards, had drowned many an ever-shifting oath. On the 7th dawn, King's Landing's walls shimmered into view, white and grim beneath rising sun. Dragonstone gray clouds loomed overhead, portents of fall storms. The Blackwater Bay lay quiescent, but Tyrell sails patrolled in uneasy truce with royal galleys. Firepots glinted along parapets, scorpions poised like monstrous insects. On the great sept's highest pinnacle, the Queen's own banner whipped wild, crowned stag over crimson hearth, mocking convergence below. Camp was struck on the southern ridge of Aegon's Hill. Robb's commanders prepared trenches, pike walls, yet the true engine stood perched upon cliff edge. 7 dragons, each scenting the distant tang of wildfire as dogs scent buried bone. The smell prickled aggressive hunger. Daenerys paced before Drogon, murmuring in Valyrian. Flames rippled beneath his throat scales. Robb knelt by Valar, pressing forehead to warm snout. "Steady, friend," he murmured. "Let our breath carve peace." Scouts returned. Wildfire stores concentrated beneath Guildhall, beneath the Dragon Pit ruins, beneath the Red Keep cellars. Each site marked on parchment, soon weighted by stones. Atop command table, Marissa and Missandei plotted arcs for aerial strike. They spoke of convection, updraft, flame resonance. Their language was half alchemy, half song. Night fell. In Robb's pavilion, the air quivered with dread anticipation. Caitlin sat beside a tiny brazier, eyes dark. "Your father would caution patience," she said. Robb knelt. "Father never faced dragonfire. He faced duty," she murmured, "which burns hotter." He clasped her hands. "If I fail, let Bran lead. He sees further than I." Tears flickered in her eyes. She blinked them away. Daenerys entered without ceremony. "It is time." She wore armor of midnight steel, dragonbone sword at hip. Robb rose. Together they exited into chill, starry night where dragons arrayed in line along cliff, necks swaying. Marissa raised a crystal horn. Its note hummed eerie through camp. Dragons lifted heads as one. At the Queen's whistle, Drogon launched, wings beating thunder. Valar followed, then Rhaegal Mirax, Viserion, Denarion, and Little Larion, the Mauve, last. From the city below came the scream of alarm bells. A scatter of arrow fires on ramparts, yet none loosed flame. The dragons climbed until starlight gleamed on scale. 7 meteors ascended. At predetermined altitude, Drogon banked toward the Red Keep. Valar mirrored, their twin shadows merging across moonlit clouds. Marissa's torches signaled ignition. High above, Robb and Daenerys urged caution, breath steady. At her command, Drogon exhaled first, a torrent of black-red flame stretching like a river of liquid midnight. Robb shouted to Valar. "Dantis," replied. Valar's breath erupted, pure crimson gold, narrower, weaving into Drogon's stream. Flames braided, twisted, forming a vortex that sucked air in a roaring funnel. Far below, wildfire fumes invisible to human eye ignited, but consumed within vortex before detonation. Green sparks spiraled upward, then blinked out like dying embers. Robb felt heat against his armor, even at distance. Valar trembled with exertion, but held. Drogon's roar vibrated through Robb's bones. To the east, Rhaegal and Mirax repeated dance above Guildhall. To the west, Viserion and Lyrian circled Dragon Pit. Denarion swooped alone over city walls, hissing at scorpions whose crews fled. Within the Red Keep, Cersei clutched Joffrey's arm as colored fires danced against stained glass. Yet no jars burst. Maesters gasped. Tyrion Lannister, imprisoned for crimes he did not commit, laughed in his cell at sound of roars he knew too well. Flame tapered. The vortex ceased. Smoke drifted harmless. Robb wheeled Valar across the bay. The city still stood. Bells rang not in alarm now, but confusion. Wildfire threat neutralized, scorpions unmanned. Morale shattered like glass. He descended to the square before Gate of the Gods. Drogon landing a thunderous heartbeat later. Soldiers scattered. Robb dismounted first, dust swirling. Daenerys slid from Drogon's neck, sword unsheathed. Gates creaked open as Kevan Lannister emerged in half-armor, white banner raised. Behind him the High Septon waddled, eyes wide. "Mercy," he cried. "The city yields." Robb took a breath heavy with ash and sea salt. "Then open your gates. No sack, no rapine. The wolf and dragon come for justice." Inside, chaos tumbled into tentative surrender. City Watch dropped spears. Small folk poured into streets to stare at winged lords. Wildfires still pooled in sewers, but inert. The greatest danger now was fear. ROBB left Daenerys to coordinate entry of Unsullied, who marched swift from her fleet. He strode to the Red Keep on foot, grey wind beside him, Valor overhead. His mind churned not with victory, but with weight of what came next, a realm with no iron throne absolute. In the torchlit throne room he found Joffrey perched on melted armor, piled into semblance of seat. Robert's crown askew, eyes bloodshot with sleepless terror. Cersei stood, wine cup dangling, expression defiant. Tyrion, freed by unseen ally, leaned on a crutch near column, mouth twisted in dark amusement. ROBB halted beneath vaulted arches. Your fires are quenched, your city spared. Joffrey shrieked, wordless rage. Cersei lifted chin. You usurp what you do not understand, Stark. Daenerys entered behind ROBB, Drogon's head thrust through shattered doorway. Smoke curled from nostrils. Cersei's bravado withered. ROBB spoke again, quiet. No more sons slain for thrones. We break the wheel. Daenerys drew a breath. Henceforth, the 7 kingdoms shall be 7 once more. Each sovereign, each bound in league of mutual aid. No single seat shall rule all. Cersei laughed bitterly. You would divide what dragons forged. We are dragons, Daenerys said, eyes glimmering. And we know forging anew sometimes means melting old chains. ROBB stepped forward, extended hand, not in mercy alone, but in finality. Crown or life, Joffrey. Choose. The boy king's shoulders shook. Tears streaked grime. Slowly, he removed gold crown. Its antlers bent. Jewels missing. He stared at it as though seeing emptiness of all desires. He held it out, arm quivering. Grey wind growled. ROBB received crown, then looked to Daenerys. Together they placed it upon the iron anvil at room's edge, once used for armory repairs. Drogon exhaled a short, searing breath. Gold melted, pooling molten across stone, sizzling into useless slab. Silence fell, broken only by crackle of cooling metal. Daenerys met ROBB's gaze. So dees the last dragon, forged throne. May a better realm rise, ROBB replied. Winter's first snow arrived weeks later, drifting across war-scarred roads like pale grace. In every kingdom banners unfurled, direwolf of the north, trout of the riverlands, falcon of the vale, rose of the reach, kraken of the isles, sun spear of Dorne, lion of the westerlands, each now equal in council at Harrenhal, chosen neutral grounds where char and memory intertwine. ROBB presided not as king of all, but as high steward of the realm, a position created to mediate between equals. Daenerys served as lady protector of the skies, her dragons pledged to defend against any who sought dominion by tyranny. Valor and Drogon nested on opposing crenellations of Harrenhal's tallest surviving tower, their brooding smoke mingling in uneasy truce, yet undeniable kinship. Mirax courted Rhaegal in spiraling dances over God's Eye, while Daenerys taught Lyrian mischief among alder groves. In distant Winterfell, ravens carried news of union to Sansa and Rickon. Their letters returned, filled with cautious hope. Bran dreamt of weirwoods whispering gratitude. Arya, somewhere upon narrow seas, heard rumor and vowed to return to witness impossible dawn. Catelyn walked Harrenhal's courtyard one frost-touched morning, watching her son greet Daenerys upon the steps. They spoke in low tones, smiles rare but genuine. Wolves and dragons, thought Catelyn, who once would have believed such pairing only in children's tales. And yet here they stood, forging a realm from ashes, not through conquest, but through the courage to relinquish crowns. Grey wind padded beside her, pausing to snuffle falling snowflakes. Above, Valor's roar rolled like distant thunder, warning, promise, or mere greeting to winter's breath. Caitlin closed her eyes and felt warmth despite chill. Warmth of hearths spared wildfire, warmth of suns alive against all odds, warmth of a future uncertain yet no longer bound by a single iron chair. When she opened them, sunlight lanced through cloud, gilding dragon's wings in brilliant burnish. The wheel had not shattered, it had evolved, reinventing itself in mosaic of banners, each piece bright within shared sky. And in that sky 7 dragons soared, weaving patterns no prophecy had foreseen. Wild, terrible, beautiful, announcing to the world that the age of singular throne was over, and the age of many flames had begun. Ja, Shuri. Maester Vyman's quill scratched tirelessly across fresh parchment. As flakes of white drifted past the arrow slit of Harrenhal's solar, the first true snow of winter settled in hushed layers upon the blasted towers, muffling every footfall and curt order echoing through the labyrinthine halls. Below, the muddy yard had transformed overnight into a field of pale opal, upon which soldiers from 6 realms trudged like ghosts in borrowed tabards, their breath plume where once smoke from siege engines had hung. Dragons dotted the sky, vast shapes passing like eclipses over moonbright drifts, and no man living now remembered an age when such wonders were not part of waking life. Robb Stark lay awake before dawn, propped on one elbow beside a brazier that hissed with pine resin. The chill seeped even through direwolf furs, yet he felt warmer than most. Valor's distant heartbeat pulsed faintly in his blood, a hearth he carried wherever he walked. Still, sleep escaped him. Across the room, Bran dozed fitfully near the embers, his face half shadow, and between those shadows, Robb imagined the map of forests and ruins Bran touched nightly in dreams. He rose, careful not to wake his brother, and crossed to the casement. Beyond the courtyard stretched the God's Eye, a dark mirror newly rimmed with ice. The Isle of Faces slumbered beneath hoarfrost, its ancient weirwoods crowned in silent white glory. For a whisper's length, Robb felt as though the whole world poised upon that lake, waiting for his breath to choose which way the wind blew. A soft rap sounded at the door. Meg Mormont entered, cheeks ruddy from morning drill. "Your council convenes," she said, wiping snow from iron pauldrons sewn with bear skulls. And the Vale's envoy arrived an hour past. "They come with grievances." "No, cantaciono de clear." Robb nodded, dragged a comb through wind-tangled hair, and belted on plain steel. No crown rested on his brow, no sigil save gray direwolf on dark leather. In a realm where thrones lay molten, symbols mattered, but he had chosen a new one. A simple clasp shaped as intertwined wolf and dragon, wrought in silver by a smith of deepwood moss. He slid it into place over his heart and followed Mage out. The great hall, once warped by Aegon's dragons, now thrummed with voices competing for dominion of air rather than land. Lords of the Reach argued vine rights with bannermen of the Westerlands. Dornish emissaries in flowing orange robes traded veiled barbs with ironborn captains smelling of tar and brine. At the high table, Daenerys sat flanked by Missandei and Jorah. Drogon dozed beyond the shattered wall, his breath fogging the courtyard like a smithy's forge. When Robb entered, conversation stilled, eyes turned as if drawn by iron filings to lodestone. He took his place beside Daenerys, nodding to her in brief greeting. They spoke little in private of late. The scope of their burdens left scant room for simple talk, but a shared glance conveyed volumes. She reached for a pewter cup and sipped mulled wine, violet eyes fixed on the Vale envoy, who stepped forward. Sir Jan Royce, cloak of bronze pinned brown wool, trailing. "Lord Stewart," Royce began, giving Daenerys a curt tilt of chin before addressing Robb. The Eyrie accepts the dissolution of the Iron Throne in principle, yet trouble simmers. Border forts along the Riverlands swear fealty to neither Arryn nor Tully. Now, free riders raid our villages, crying wolf or dragon as banner of convenience. We request clear delineation of borders, compensation for crops burned in last summer's marches, and, his voice hardened, the return of 2 Waynwood hostages still held by your Karstark vassals. Robb set hands on the table. Hostages taken in skirmish outside Maidenpool. Yes, they remain unharmed. They will be escorted home come spring when roads thaw. Royce's jaw tightened. Spring may find their mothers broken with grief. Daenerys leaned in. Command yourself, sir. No blood will be traded for terms already sworn. The hall hushed. Royce lowered his gaze, recognizing the iron in her tone. Yet, ripples of disquiet coursed through assembled lords. Robb sensed it. They wore new chainmail of alliance, but every link still groaned under weight of old grudges. He struck his staff once on the dais. Borders shall be surveyed under joint commission of Vale and Riverlands, beginning tomorrow. Compensation in grain from the Reach will be routed through Harrenhal storehouses. Lord Hightower has pledged surplus. See to distribution, Lord Rowan. The Reachmen gave reluctant assent. As for raiders, Robb continued, my riders will patrol the valley passes under Lord Glover's command. Rustle of parchment, nods begrudging. Royce offered stiff bow and stepped aside. Next came Asha Greyjoy, stride predatory in black sealskin breeches. She tossed a gnarled piece of driftwood onto the table. Ift, she said, carved from the prow of a Lannister galley, captured off Fair Isle. Proof the Kraken, keep seas cleared for your grain ships. No, nah, lords muttered. Some scowled. Asha smiled. But ironmen starve as well. Our rocky fields yield little. We've brought a ledger of salt tax proposals. Levies on each shipment using Iron Isle's escort. Robb examined her list. 5 silver stags per barrel of wine is steep. Cheaper than losing the barrel to pirates, Asha countered. Low laughter rippled. Others bristled. Robb rubbed temples. Ever since Tywin's retreat to Casterly Rock and Joffrey's deposition, trade lanes sprouted like ivy where war had trampled them. But with each lane came grasping hands. He was steward to 1,000 hungers. Catelyn entered then, face pale. She approached Robb's ear. A raven from the wall, she whispered. Urgent. He excused himself, Daenerys following close. In a side antechamber, they unfurled the raven's parchment. Jon Snow's firm hand hastily penned. The Dead Walk. Eastwatch overrun. Shadow crowned in ice commands them. We require fire and steel at once. Send dragons, or the night will never end. Robb's pulse thudded. He looked up to Daenerys. Her jaw clenched. It begins, she murmured. They reconvened with council. Herald silenced room. Robb read the message aloud. Murmurs quickened to frantic talk. Some scoffed. Old wives' tales. But Maester Vyman confirmed earlier ravens reporting whites glimpsed outside Shadow Tower. White wolves prowling, shivering sea. Daenerys stood. When I crossed the Red Waste, visions told me winter's darkness follows heat of dragons. I thought it allegory. Now I see we rouse what slumbers in ice. Lord Rowan slammed fist. The wall stands. Eastwatch has fallen. Catelyn snapped, voice razor Bardush. How long before the rest? Asha Greyjoy crossed arms. Even krakens fear what swims in those waters. Robb lifted his staff again. We march north. An outcry. Leave our holds undefended. What of Tywin? Wildlings will pour south. Robb waited, gaze sweeping until voices faltered. I will lead a host of volunteers. Riverlords, Northmen, free folk if they will stand, Ironborn who hold honor still. Others may stay and guard your homes. But know this, homes turn to graves if the darkness wins. Choose now. Nay. A hush, heavy as snow. Great John Umber rose, smashing ale cup on floor. The last winter's at our door. Who fears cold? The North remembers. He pounded chest. Meg Mormont followed. Glover, Karstark, Blackfish, even Sir Jan Royce grudgingly nodded. Daenerys addressed them. I fly with you, with dragons 3 at least. Drogon Valar Rhaegal will bear fire. Viserion and the young ones remain to deter any would-be Kingslayers out. Robb met her eyes. We ride at dawn 3 days hence. Quartermasters, ready winter kit. Maesters gather dragon glass, Valyrian blades. He dismissed council. Hearts hammered beneath cloaks as lords filed out. Robb and Daenerys lingered in watchtower stairwell lit by ducted torches. Snowflakes flurried in each arrow slit, dissolving on flame. You need not come, Robb said quietly. She laughed once, breath fogging. I was born for fire and blood, yet every dream ends amid snow. How could I not follow where prophecy leads? He caught her hand, fingers truly warm, though tower air bit fierce. In the open emptiness between duty and longing, words clung unsaid. She squeezed his fingertips, then withdrew. Rest. War against shadows taxes daylight. She descended to courtyard where Drogon waited, a black mountain with ember eyes. Over the next 2 days, Harrenhal convulsed like a kicked hornet's nest. Smithies rang night and dawn, forging arrowheads of dragon glass delivered from dragonstone vaults. Lords passed casks of obsidian shards hand to calloused hand, uncertain whether such brittle glass could decide fates of men. Maester Veman brewed wildfire green salves, rumored to freeze white flesh upon contact. Alchemy meeting witchcraft on slabs, still warm from dragon flame. Bran watched from ramparts, eyes reflecting endless snow. Catelyn found him there. You should be packing furs, she urged. The march will chill your bones. I may not march, Bran replied. The ravens call me north, faster than any horse. He touched bark of a dead tower's scorched beam. I must fly other ways. She shivered, though no wind blew. Do not go where I cannot follow. He smiled, sad, sweet. Where I go, every tree and stone may carry me. Perhaps I'll stand closer than ever. She pressed her lips to his forehead. Sap's scent lingered on his skin. She feared letting go, yet release she must. Children were seeds flung upon currents far beyond a mother's hands. At sunrise on the 3rd day, an army snaked from Harrenhal's gates. 5,000 spears, 1,200 archers, 800 horse, supply wagons guarded by free folk archers recently sworn under Tormund Giantsbane. Asha Greyjoy commanded a vanguard of longships up the Green Fork to ferry provisions along inland streams iced at edges. Dorns and sand-skinned lancers eager to taste snow for first time. The Reach, reluctant, parted ways at Maidenpool to guard harvest shipments. Yet Rowan left 200 knights under Sir Talbot Serry to accompany Robb. Overhead, 3 dragons traced spirals in pale sky. Drogon vast as a fleeting moon, Valar crimson sunlit, Rhaegal verdant thunder. Beside the column trotted grey wind, muzzle frosted white, golden eyes fixed toward colder horizons. Daenerys rode a white courser, cloak flaring scarlet. Robb a grey destrier named Hearthstone for his steadfast gait. They rarely spoke, but shared glances, each drawing silent strength from the other's resolve. Days blurred into nights of campfires, sparking under aurora, that danced green like ghostly rivers across black vault. Southron soldiers first stared wide as children, hearing wild husky howls beyond tree lines, believing them monsters. Northmen chuckled, telling them those were only wind sisters, not yet the wailing dead. At Moat Cailin the host split. Asha's ships advanced through Blazewater Bay to Eastwatch, charred docks. Land army followed the King's Road. The ruined towers of the moat stood glazed in ice. Ravens perched in arrow loops once manned by ironborn reavers. Within their echoes Robb heard his father's voice. Hold the pass or the cold will flood south. He tightened cloak, eyes distant. Scouts brought first dead, a stable hen frozen mid-run, eyes blue as glacier, though no wound marred him. They burned the corpse before night, but the pyre's smoke stank of rotten pine and bitterness that clung to nostrils long after. The wall materialized at dusk on seventh day, a jagged shadow blotting northern stars. Where once stood Eastwatch's sturdy towers gaped a mangled hole, timbers twisted, ice sheared by immense force. Ships lay smashed beneath cliffs, sails shredded to ribbons. Whites prowled beach like crabs, pale shapes picking at carrion. Drogon descended in roaring torrent, fire cascading across shoreline. Ice thing screams pierced wind. Blue eyes popped like bubbles under wrath of living flame. Valor strafed trenches, crisping undead that stumbled through ashes. Rhaegal landed tempers, spent and swiped tail into a horde, bones crunching like dry twigs. From atop a ragged rampart Jon Snow emerged clad in black furs, long claws strapped to back, eyes sunken with exhaustion. Robb dismounted by shattered gate. They embraced, brothers sundered by war now reunited at world's end. Jon's breath shuddered. We held till dawn 3 nights, then the walker came, ice crown, spear of frost. A scream turned men to statues. Only Valyrian steel broke him, but he reformed like smoke. He pointed over a frozen sea where a blue mist whirled. He waits there, gathering whites on thinning ice. Daenerys joined them. Jon gave a curt bow. They had met months earlier during parley at Dragonstone, but parted before coup at King's Landing. Now his expression mingled relief and wary respect. Your Grace, he said, the dragons saved many, yet each pass they draw more whites from wood. Fire calls them like moths. Daenerys frowned. Perhaps they feed on heat, ice seeking balance. Robb eyed broken rampart. We patch where we can, but fight must go to them. He turned to Jon. Tell me numbers. Jon's voice rough. At least 20,000 whites ring that bay. We slew hundreds only to see more rise. Walkers 11 we've counted. Maybe more in Blizzard Heart. Robb looked towards swirling North Star. Night's cold bit deeper, and he sensed Valar's anxious pulse. Somewhere beyond ice mists roared the unknown father of winter. They established camp within Eastwatch's gutted courtyard. Maesters erected braziers of pitch to keep frost at bay. Tormund giantsbane swaggered among free folk, slapping shoulders. I told you kneelers we'd see the dead. Now let's show them how wild we dance. Dragonglass arrowheads glinted as archers fletched them by torchlight. Valyrian blades, Longclaw, Lady Forlorn, Heartsbane, lent by Lord Rowan's cousin, and Oathkeeper, sent north by a repentant Jaime Lannister, were arrayed like black fire on weapon racks. Bran stood before the wall's wounded ice, his eyes rolling white. Wind keened through gap. Suddenly he gasped, sagging. Caitlin caught him. Nice. He sees, she whispered. Bran's voice echoed hollow. The heart of winter cracks. A blue star falls. Beware that the spear of sorrow. Robb felt hair raise. Jon exchanged glance. Daenerys spoke low. Prophecies again. Bran's pupils return. He comes at dawn. He pointed east, where faint light glimmered through storm cloud. Do not meet him upon ice, or wings will shatter. Robb swallowed. Then we draw him inland. They devised plan. Before sunrise, Drogon and Valar would scorch ridge above shore, creating firebreak funnel. Ground troops would lure whites into this corridor, then dragons would collapse fiery walls behind, trapping horde. Valyrian's steel vanguard would engage, walkers within ring. Rhaegal served as rapid rescue. Risk extreme. If funnel faltered, host would be engulfed on two fronts. Soldiers listened, jaws tight. Some muttered prayers to Seven, free folk to snow gods. Dornish whispered to Mother of Mountains. Robb addressed them, men and women of every banner. Remember this night when children yet unborn ask why they live free. We hold the line where all lines end. Now, cheers rose raw as cracked earth. Even the wind paused, as though respecting vow. At first gray of dawn, the funnel blazed into life. Drogon's flame carved two parallel troughs through snow-packed dunes, molten sand sizzling into glassy trenches. Valar mirrored from opposite end, rising amid steam like a red titan. White surged, blue eyes flicking between dancing pillars of fire. War horns howled. Jon led the first charge, long claw cleaving. Robb beside him, Winterfell steel dawn feathers slashing white sinew. Grey wind barreled through ranks, jaws ripping icicle flesh, ignoring claws that raked his flanks. Behind them Tormund laughed thunder, swinging a hammer lined with dragon glass spikes. Meg Mormont dueled a walker, breaking its spear, then shoving dragon glass dirk under crystalline shin. The creature shattered into diamond hail. Farther in funnel's throat, Asha Greyjoy's sea wolves hurled burning pitch barrels that burst among whites. Dornish arrows hissed overhead, obsidian tipping each shaft. When arrows struck Walker's chest, explosion of frost shards blew 5 whites clear. Yet the dead kept coming, tide of brittle limbs striking shield edges, screech rising higher than winter wind. The world narrowed to clash of steel and crackle of flame. Frost leached heat, but each heartbeat pumped rage. Then he appeared, Night King astride, pallid elk-like mount, crown of jagged ice horns sweeping starward. In his hand a spear forged from fragment of heart-frozen comet, glittering with dawn's first rays. He rode beyond funnel's mouth, raising arm. Whites parted, forming wedge following his mount. Jon shouted challenge, sprinting through melee. Robb followed, Valar wheeling low overhead. Night King's gaze fixed on dragons, not men. He hefted spear, drawing back. Air stiffened, as though winter inhaled. Bran's warning thundered in Robb's mind, beware the spear of sorrow. Without thought, Robb bellowed orders through bond with Valar, an instinctive mental tug. The crimson dragon banked, breath searing toward Night King, but frost condensed mid-flame, twisting into spiral of snow that absorbed fire and hissing steam. From vortex the ice spear launched upward, straight at Valar's chest. Time fractured. Robb felt heat vanish, replaced by spike of terror. But Drogon plunged between. The spear grazed his shoulder, shards glancing off scale. Dragon blood hissed onto snow. Drogon roared pure wrath, flame blasting Night King's mount into ash. Yet the walker stood, stepping from inferno unscathed, forging another spear from swirling steam. Jon reached him, long claw swinging. Steel met crystal hard parry. Sparks of frost and ember flew. Night King's motions fluid as wind, triple parried thrust. Jon barely ducked. Walker backhanded. Jon flew into drift. Robb charged, Winterfell steel whistling. Before he struck, Night King's chill aura slowed his limbs. Joints stiffened, breath crystallized. Spear tip thrust for heart. Yet grey wind flashed, jaws locking on Walker's arm. Spear deflected, vengeful direwolf teeth ground on ice flesh. Snarl met silence. Ice cracked, but did not yield. Night King swung free, sending Wolf tumbling. Spear raised again. Scream tore sky, Daenerys riding regal dove, golden green flame enveloping Walker. Blue fire, unnatural cold blaze, burst outward, canceling heat, leaving swirling fog. Within that fog, Bran appeared, yet not Bran. His eyes white, body limp, carried by stark guards. Ravens circled above, cawing chorus. Through Bran's lips, a voice older than men echoed. "Remember your name, Shadow King." The ravens swooped, black tide swirling Night King's head, pecking at eyes of blue flame. He faltered. Jon scrambled up, seizing moment. Long claws slashed, cleaving ice crown. Robb thrust dragonglass dagger into rent. Cracks spiderwebbed. Night King screamed, a sound like glaciers calving. He lurched, spear thrust downward. Jon dodged, spear plunged into snow. A shiver rippled across whites. They paused, heads tilting. Robb ripped dagger free and plunged again deeper. Jon hammered Longclaw, two-handed. Crystal Heart exploded in flash of blinding azure light. Silence roared. Every white dropped, marionette strings severed. Snow settled, drifting over a field of sudden corpses already turning to brittle dust. Frost in air eased. Wind exhaled warm sigh from distant south. Robb sagged, muscles liquid. Jon clasped forearm. They exchanged disbelieving grins. Gray wind limped to Robb, muzzle blood-flecked, but alive. Vela wheeled overhead in triumphant roar, joined by Drogon. Elves! Men behind broke into cheers that cracked hoarse throats. But Bran collapsed fully now, eyes closed. Catelyn knelt, tears freezing on cheeks. Maesters hurried. Now Tiduswa. Daenerys dismounted regal, examining wound on Drogon's shoulder. Slivers of ice embedded. They steamed as she plucked, hissing. Drogon nudged her lightly, large head lowering in trust. She kissed his snout. Robb approached, resting hand on Dragon's hot flank. Their eyes met, relief, respect, something fiercer unspoken. In Eastwatch's ruined hall, they lit every hearth. Tormund toasted with giant horn, brimming mead. Meg Mormont sang Bear Island warrior chant. Even Dornish clapped rhythm, yet grief attended victory. 300 dead, many more wounded. Bran lay feverish, murmuring unknown tongues. Jon found Robb on parapet overlooking calm sea, now shimmering under muted sun. "It's done," Jon asked, voice quiet. "For now," Robb replied. "But winter remains." Jon nodded. White Harbor reports Kraken sails alongside Lannister colors. Tywin allies with Euron Greyjoy. They muster fleet bigger than Royal Navy ever was. Robb exhaled. Of course he does. And writes from Old Town. Maesters debate scrolls claiming another doom follows, when dragons gather thrice three. Robb smirked wearily. Prophecies breed like rabbits. Jones' gaze hardened. "We need you south. The realm's still fragile. And Daenerys, she is tethered to dragons. Some fear her flight north left kingdom ripe for revolt." Robb's shoulders sagged. "Soon as Bran recovers, we return." Jon clasped brother's shoulder. "I march with you. Night's watch. Few left to watch. Realm needs swords where war still burns." Robb smiled thinly. "Then stand by me once more, Lord Commander." Snow drifted gentle. Robb allowed himself moments quiet, seagull cry, crack of ice clumps falling from wall. Then he descended to courtyard, where Daenerys waited beside Valor and Drogon, crimson and black wings furling in soft wind. Rhaegal perched on broken tower, surveying world newly spared. She met Robb halfway. "We ride south tomorrow, after funeral pyres at dawn." She nodded. "I will light them." He hesitated, then offered his arm. She took it. Together, they walked among tents where wounded murmured dreams, and freed folk taught reachmen to laugh at frost. Fires glowed in every brazier, though the night lay cold. In that glow lingered promise, not of peace, perhaps, but of morning more than one banner might greet with hope. 3 weeks later, winter's sun glinted on gilded spires of kings landing as rebuilt gates swung outward for returning hosts. War-scar lines still marred city. Wildfire scorched walls, toppled bell towers, half-collapsed flea-bottom rows. Yet small folk emerged to witness dragons overhead, this time with more wonder than dread. Children waved blue scarves, the new emblem merchants sold, woven with wolf, dragon, and twine. Musicians plucked strings in squares, singing of snowfalls and where dead were broken beneath twin flames. But Tywin Lannister's banner did not greet. Scouts reported golden lions massing west near Blackwater Rush, bolstered by ironborn reavers. Tywin had not thrown dice on open battle. He harried supply lines, seeking to starve capital while forging secret pacts with Storm's End and Old Town hop merchants chafing under grain ties. In Red Keep's refurbished council chamber, throne dais stripped, now replaced by round ashwood table, ROBB Daenerys Tyrion, newly appointed Master of Quills, Davos Seaworth, and Oberyn Martell gathered. Tyrion pointed with broken bronze rod at map pins. Lord Tywin flexes claws in Riverlands again. He captured Stonehenge, executed Bracken loyalists. Ironborn raiders burn salt pans to deny us fish. We risk famine if harvest convoys blocked. Nay, Davos stroked beard. We could send Blackwater fleet to break iron blockade. Oberyn twirled spear idly. We could send dragon to break Tywin. Robb frowned. If we scorch Westerlands, realm fractures anew. Tywin hopes exactly for that. Wolf and dragon painted as tyrants. Daenerys traced line across map from Casterly Rock to Old Town. Like not of fire but of symbol then. We free gold mine slaves. Feed hungry villages he ignores. We uplift realm where lion hoards coin. Starve his pride. Tyrion chuckled. My sister would choke on such irony, but father's coffers deep. He can hire mercenaries from across narrow sea. Robb gaze sharpened. Unless Essos closes purse. What if we reach out to Bank of Bravos? Show them new rule more stable than old lion's debts. Tyrion tapped rod. I shall send ravens. Plans unfurled like banners on wind. Expedition to Lannisport, delivering grain. Joint patrols along coast. Dornish Reach envoy forging trade of olives for barley. Night's Watch veterans training city guard. Andor Watch veterans training city guard. Each scheme threads weaving cloth of newly envisioned realm. Yet in corners of city shadows lengthened, spies whispered of zealot sect, preaching dragons herald doom, citing prophecy of black sun turned to ash. They rallied fisherfolk, stirred riots in twilight alleys. In hidden cellar, a smuggled Volantine bolt thrower assembled piece by piece, its quarrels tipped with midnight glass crafted to shatter scale. And in Casterly Rock's deep mines, Tywin conversed with pale-eyed Selzord, who claimed to hold horn capable of bending dragons to will, or killing them if they refused. Storm brewed again. On quiet evening, Robb climbed Tower of the Hand. Now his quarters, finding Daenerys at parapet gazing over bay where ships twinkled lanterns like earthbound constellations. She did not turn as he approached. Can you hear them? She asked. The ships, the people. Her voice drifted. They sing different songs now, but fear lingers between notes. He rested arms atop stone next to hers. Fear never leaves. We can only outvoice it. She tilted head. When winter winds howl again, will our chorus suffice? He considered, star-strewn, sky. We faced heart of winter and lived. Together, maybe we face even our own hearts. No. She looked at him, truly looked, as though weighing possibility of gentler dream. In torch glow, her hair shimmered argent. Rob's breath formed cloud between them. She spoke first. When dragons hatched for me, I thought them family enough. Yet I've found kinship in those who ride no wings. He took her hand carefully, like lifting fragile ember. And I have found skies I never dared imagine. Thunder grumbled distant, storm brewing over sea. They stood unmoving. Neither needed prophecy to know challenges ahead. Tuon's horn, zealot plots, hunger of realm, dragons' relentless growth. But for heartbeat on stone wall, they allowed themselves simply to be. A woman forged in flame. A man tempered in snow. Two souls whose union might yet teach world that fire and ice could warm rather than burn. Below, tide lapped ancient piers. Above, Valor and Drogon circled red keep, black and red scales glinting against lantern globe. Their roars melded into low rumble, neither challenge nor warning. Promise perhaps of dawn still shaping. Robb squeezed Daenerys' hand. Tomorrow we ride west, he said. Not with fear, but with harvest. She smiled faintly, eyes softening. Then, let tomorrow come. Snowflakes began to fall. Impossibly, softly, upon bay warmed by southern currents. Each flake a quiet bell that told not doom, but change. And as they melted on dragons' wings, they hissed like distant applause for stories still unwritten.